June 14th, 1098. Inside the Cathedral of St. Peter in Antioch, 12 men have been digging since dawn. They are looking for a spear. The spear. The one that pierced Christ's side on the cross 1100 years ago. A man told them it was here, under this floor. St. Andrew appeared to him in a vision and showed him exactly where. They have been digging for a full day. They have found nothing. The man who told them to dig is watching from the edge of the hole. He is not a bishop, not a knight, not anyone. He is a servant from Provence with a reputation for drinking and worse. He takes off his outer robe, drops into the hole in his shirt, and comes up hoed a piece of iron. Most people know the Holy Lance as a relic, an object, something in a glass case in Vienna or Rome that may or may not be what it claims to be. But here is what the story actually is. The lance was not a miracle that saved the First Crusade. It was a single question that 20,000 starving men chose to answer the same way. Do you believe this? And the answer to that question, not the object, not the iron, not whether any of it was real, is what marched out of the gates of Antioch on June 28th and destroyed an army 3 times its size. This is the story of the man in the hole and what his piece of iron actually was. October 1097, the army of the First Crusade arrives at Antioch. They have been marching for a year, from France, from Normandy, from southern Italy. Tens of thousands of knights, foot soldiers, pilgrims, servants. Antioch is the gateway to Palestine. Every road south runs through it. To reach Jerusalem, they need this city. The walls are Roman-era fortifications rebuilt and reinforced by the Seljuk Turks. 4 miles of stone studded with 400 towers. The citadel sits on a mountain above the city, commanding every approach. The Crusader commanders look at the walls and make a decision. They cannot storm them. They will starve the city out. It is the last mistake they expect to make. It becomes their own. The siege lasts 8 months. The winter of 1097 to 1098 does not stop raining. 1 in 5 crusaders dies of starvation. 1 in 5. Not in battle, just die. Of the tens of thousands of horses that left Europe, 700 remain by spring. The rest? When the horses are gone, the soldiers eat leather. Boil it until it softens enough to swallow. Some accounts go further than leather. The chroniclers write it down and then look away. Knights sell their armor for bread, the same armor they mortgaged their estates to buy before leaving home. The army is not an army anymore. It is a crowd of people starving inside a siege they cannot break. Kerbogha, the Atabeg of Mosul, is marching to relieve Antioch. He has assembled a coalition of emirs from across the Muslim world. 35,000 men, perhaps more. If Kerbogha arrives before Antioch falls, the Crusaders will be trapped between the walls and his army, slaughtered in the open. The commanders do the calculation. They have 1 chance. Take the city before he gets here. Bohemond of Taranto has been quietly cultivating a contact inside the walls for months. An Armenian guard named Firouz, who controls the Tower of the Two Sisters and has a grievance against the city's governor. On the night of June 2nd, Firouz opens the tower. 60 of Bohemond's knights climb a ladder in the dark, one at a time, in silence, and disappear over the wall. They move through the upper city, opening gate after gate. By the time anyone inside realizes what is happening, the army is already in. By morning, Antioch belongs to the Crusaders. The governor Yagi Sian flees and is killed by Armenian peasants in the hills. His son holds the citadel, but the city is taken. They have exactly 3 days to celebrate. June 5th, Kerbogha's vanguard reaches Antioch. June 7th, the siege lines go up around the walls the Crusaders just entered. The besiegers have become the besieged. The city they just captured has been stripped. The garrison ate everything during the 8-month siege. There is nothing left inside. Kerbogha does not need to storm the walls. He just needs to wait. The same arithmetic that almost broke the Crusaders outside the walls will finish them inside. Alexios, the Byzantine emperor who was supposed to come with reinforcements, has turned back. Refugees told him the Crusaders were already finished. He believed them and marched home. There is no relief army coming. There is no food. there is no way out. Men who survived 8 months of starvation outside the walls are now starving again inside them. Some throw themselves from the battlements. The chronicles record it without comment. This is when Peter Bartholomew asks to speak with the Count of Toulouse. Peter is nobody, a servant in the army of Raymond of Saint-Gilles, the Count of Toulouse, one of thousands of anonymous men attached to the Crusade who history would never have recorded if things had gone differently. His reputation, such as it is, runs toward earthly pleasures, a drinker, a womanizer, not a man you build a religion around. But Peter has been carrying something since December, 6 months, through the worst of the siege, through the starvation, through the desertion of better men than him. St. Andrew appeared to him not once, 5 times, took him in vision to the Cathedral of St. Peter inside the city, showed him a spot on the floor, told him the Holy Lance was buried there, told him to report it to the army's leaders. The Lance of Longinus, the Roman spear that pierced Christ's side at the crucifixion, the most sacred weapon in Christendom. Peter did not say anything. He was a servant, a drunk. He knew exactly how he would be received. So he waited. After the second vision, he told himself he would speak when the moment was right. After the third, he bargained with himself. After the fourth, he was losing his sight, probably from the famine, and he decided St. Andrew was punishing him for his silence. After the fifth, he still said nothing. He says nothing through the worst of the starvation, through Kerbogha's arrival, through men throwing themselves from the battlements. He only speaks when speaking is the only thing left, when the army has nowhere lower to go. The Count of Toulouse receives him. The Bishop of Le Puy, Adhemar, sits beside the Count, is the papal legate, the spiritual authority of the entire crusade. A sophisticated man, a skeptic. He listens to Peter's account and does not believe a word of it. A servant, a drunk. Visions since December that he kept to himself for 6 months. The lance buried conveniently in a city they now happen to occupy. The Count of Toulouse believes him completely. Raymond of Saint-Gilles is one of the most powerful lords in Europe. He is also a man who has staked everything on this crusade. His fortune, his lands, his reputation. He needs this to be true. The Count orders the dig. June 14th. 12 men enter the Cathedral of St. Peter and begin pulling up the floor. They dig from morning, through midday, into the afternoon, finding nothing. The Count of Toulouse is there. He watches for a while and then leaves. He cannot watch it fail. Peter watches from the edge of the hole. The light is going. The men are exhausted. The hole is empty. He takes off his outer robe, drops into the pit in his shirt. One witness, Raymond of Aguilez, the Count's own chaplain, later writes that he saw the iron in the ground before Peter touched it, that it was there, that Peter did not bring it with him. Other witnesses are less certain. What everyone agrees on is what Peter comes up holding, a piece of rusted iron, curved, old. He is weeping, shouting. The men in the cathedral begin weeping. The word spreads into the streets. By nightfall, the entire city knows the Holy Lance is found. What happens next is not a military story. It is a story about what people will do when they decide something is true. The army that was throwing itself from the walls 2 weeks ago is not throwing itself from the walls anymore. Men who were too weak to lift their weapons are sharpening them. Knights who sold their armor are borrowing it back. Peter issues new instructions from St. Andrew. The army must fast for 5 days to purify itself, then march out and fight. 5 days of fasting. Men who are already starving, fasting on purpose, and they do it. On June 28th, the gates of Antioch open. 6 divisions of Crusaders march out in formation onto the plain where Kerbogha's army is waiting. Kerbogha's commander urges him to attack immediately. Strike them while they are crossing the river. Destroy them before they can form up. Kerbogha hesitates. He does not want to spend his own men to break their front line. He will wait until they are fully out and then envelop them. It is the last decision he makes as a commander. Here is what the chronicles do not say plainly. Kerbogha's coalition was already finished before the battle started. The emirs who rode with him from across the Muslim world were not there to serve his ambitions. They were there because they had to appear to serve them, and they had been calculating for weeks. Kerbogha was not just trying to retake Antioch, he was trying to consolidate power across Syria, to absorb the city into his own territory, to become the dominant force in the region. Which meant that for Ducac of Damascus, for the Emir of Homs, for half the men in that coalition, a Crusader-held Antioch was actually preferable to a Kerbogha-held Antioch. These foreigners from France and Normandy had no interest in Syria beyond this one city. Kerbogha had very clear interest in none of it. The emirs had decided they would let him lose. The Crusaders formed their 6 divisions on the plain. The lance carried at the front, soldiers who have not eaten properly in months, in armor they borrowed or begged, marching toward an army that dwarfs them. Some of them see things in the hills above the battle. White riders, mounted figures in white, carrying white banners. Saints George and Mercurius and Demetrius riding down from the mountains to fight alongside them. Kerbogha sets the grass on fire between his lines and the Crusaders to break their advance. They walk through it. He tries to flank them on the left. Bohemond seals the gap before it opens. He sends emissaries to negotiate. The Crusader commanders do not slow their march long enough to receive them. Kerbogha's own commander has been urging him since the 1st Division emerged from the gates, strike them now while they are crossing the river, before they form up. Kerbogha refused. He wanted them all out in the open at once. Now they are us out, and they are still coming. Then Ducac of Damascus turns his men around and rides away. That is all it takes. When Damascus goes, the calculation becomes visible to everyone on the field simultaneously. Emir after emir reaches the same conclusion. Within minutes, Kerbogha's army is not an army. It is men running in every direction while the Crusaders pursue them for miles. The battle that was supposed to be the end of the First Crusade is over before noon. Peter Bartholomew does not live to see Jerusalem. The lance becomes a political object the moment the battle ends. The Count of Toulouse keeps it. It becomes his claim to authority over the Crusade, his argument against Bohemond, his proof of divine favor. But the visions keep coming, and the visions keep conveniently serving Raymond's interests. Every time the army needs to do what Raymond wants, St. Andrew appears to Peter and tells him so. The Norman faction sees it clearly. Arnulf of Choques, chaplain to the Duke of Normandy, calls Peter a fraud publicly. Why was the lance in Antioch at odd? Why not Jerusalem? Why does a Roman soldier's spear look like an Arabic weapon? Peter's answer is to demand a trial by fire. His choice, his demand. On Good Friday, April 8th, 1099, he walks through a corridor of burning wood carrying the lance, wearing only a tunic. What happens next depends on who you believe. One account says he was horribly burned and died 12 days later of his wounds. Another says he emerged from the fire completely unharmed and was then crushed by the crowd that rushed to touch him and died of that. Either way, he is dead on April 20th, and the lance is discredited. And Raymond of Toulouse never recovers his authority over the crusade. Jerusalem falls to the Crusaders 3 months later on July 15th, 1099. Raymond is not the one who takes it. Here is the thing about the spear in the floor. It does not matter whether Peter Bartholomew planted it. It does not matter whether he truly believed what he said. It does not matter whether the iron he pulled from that hole was Roman, Byzantine, Arabic, or a piece of a plow. What matters is that on June 14th, the army was dying. And on June 28th, it marched out. This is Ash and Iron. New episodes on YouTube and Facebook every week. If this story belongs on your channel, you know where to find us.